Welcome back to Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Today, in honor of 4th of July, happy 4th of July, everyone, I'm going to talk about the episode from Season 7, The Obstacle. As we all celebrate July 4th, I thought it only fitting that we take a moment to reflect on the sacrifices that it has taken for us to gain our independence and to maintain it for all of these years, centuries even. And those sacrifices included the men like Mike Paxton in this episode, who came back injured and is now in a wheelchair, and those men who didn't come back, like Kurt in Pearl Harbor or GW from his training accident. Early in the episode, we see Ben and Ike, who are rehearsing a little musical song and dance number with the help of Corbeth and with Jason. And they are planning to audition for USO shows.
The whole day through is dream of you.
Someone is going to be coming to Kleinberg Conservatory, where Jason goes to school, and is going to be auditioning different sorts of novelty acts to entertain the troops. Both local and perhaps a little further afield, depending on people's ability to travel. For myself, I had the great pleasure and honor to perform for 2 different USO tours in the 1980s as part of a couple of Hollywood celebrity tours that went out. One went through Alaska and the Aleutian Islands, and the other one went from Greenland to Iceland to England, with a little stop off in Newfoundland, Canada. So it was a tremendous pleasure to be able to go out and entertain our troops, who were in many cases in very remote areas like the Aleutian Islands or Greenland. And this was at Christmas time, so very cold, but just such a great joy. One of the best experiences of my life, and an honor for me to be able to do something to give back to all of those servicemen who were away from their families for extended periods of time, and particularly over the holidays. The family has received a letter from John Boy, and Olivia reads it to all of us. He is concerned about Mike because he knew about the incident with Mike's ship and has tried to send him letters, hasn't heard back. So he asks if the family will reach out and find out how he is. Of course, me being the nurse in the family, I have doctors that I know that are at the hospital where Mike is currently staying. So I go over there. As I arrive, I thought it was very interesting in this particular shot that in the background, we're clearly on Midwest Street, and this particular building, which you have seen used multiple times for different locations, hospitals, Boatwright University, different things like that. But in the background, you will see the center of Midwest Street, where that gazebo is that was used in different scenes. And across in the background, you see a white building with a steeple. That building was used on the Waltons for the church at some points, particularly the episode in the Easter story and when Mary Ellen and Jonesy were married. Most of the time, we knew it as the schoolhouse on Waltons Mountain. So you get a little bit of it in the background where you're not focused on it. But for those of you who like those tidbits, there you go. Finding out that although Mike started some of his physical therapy, he has hit a point where he's sort of given up, and he is afraid to go back out into the world. He's afraid of failing. He's uncomfortable with it. He wants to just kind of stay shut in and tucked away. Feeling that that's not the best thing for him, I encourage him and get his agreement, at least temporarily, to come home with me to the family, knowing that the family would love to see him. So I surprise everyone by bringing him home. We, of course, want to respect how he's feeling emotionally, but at the same time, we want to just reassure him and help build his confidence and his recognition that there is life beyond this injury, that there are opportunities out there, and we would like to help him to explore these possibilities and feel better about a path going forward. Ben gets an idea to make it easier for Mike to navigate around, so he builds a ramp. So at one point, when it's breakfast time, Mary Ellen basically just says, if you want breakfast, come on out and get it. Mike exits the shed where he's been staying and sees this ramp, and he just thinks this is great. Jim Bob has given him the horn off of his car temporarily, and he kind of comes out, goes up the ramp, then turns around and goes back down. We're all a little concerned, but he gets that horn and he comes roaring back out and in. And this is the first moment where we see him having a positive outlook about something that he has encountered in his new reality. Of all the members of the family, Grandma most relates to the need to feel useful, to feel needed, to have things that you can do to contribute to family and people around you. So after dinner, she basically tells Mike, you need to get to work and dry those dishes. Mike is happy to pitch in. And over the course of the time he's with the family, Olivia has him fixing all kinds of things. John has him helping load lumber into the truck. And he does start finding his way a bit. Erin, who's working at the picket defense plant, tells him that there is a job opening for a supervisor, and she feels like Mike should apply because he is organized, he's reliable, and she thinks he would be terrific at the job. Mike isn't so sure, but as he spends time with the family, he begins to feel that he does want to give this a try. Along the way, there's some fun little moments. I love when he decides to take John Curtis for a little ride in his wheelchair up and down the ramp. And John Curtis doesn't seem totally convinced at first, but he kind of gets into the swing of things. As Mike repairs an ironing board for Olivia, they have a beautiful conversation, and he does talk about how he doesn't know what his future is, and Olivia basically says it's whatever you make of it. She finds out that he has or had a girl back home, but he hasn't been back in touch with her since. Olivia encourages a get in touch with his old girlfriend because she feels she would want to know and that he should at least give her the chance to express her own thoughts rather than him deciding that he has nothing to offer her. And Olivia basically says, well, you have yourself to offer, and that's more than enough. As Erin and Mike watch a rehearsal that Ben and Ike are having for their USO audition, there's a point where Mike, after watching them dancing and focused on their feet and realizing he will never do things like that again, he leaves the rehearsal and he goes outside. Erin follows him out, and at one point she puts her hand on his shoulder, and he sort of looks at her surprised and says, you don't mind touching me? And she says, well, why would I? And he kind of looks at her and goes, well, darn if I know. Mike decides he will give a shot at that job at Pickett's. He comes and he is having a conversation with J.D. Pickett, who says, oh, gee, I'm sorry, we really can't hire someone who's handicapped. We have no jobs, and, happy to write you a reference. And Erin reminds him that there is a supervisor's job, and it is in an area where he would be able to navigate. But JD basically says, no, until you can drive up here in a car and get out and climb these stairs, we can't hire you. Mike is very discouraged by this news, and of course, JD, being JD, is completely unreasonable about the things that he says and does. When it's time for Ben and Ike's actual audition with the two men from the USO, at first Ben freezes and Ike's like, oh, it'll be fine, you'll be fine. Corbeth is like, you'll be fine. And then when it comes time to actually do it, Ike, who has always talked like, oh, I know showbiz, I don't get nervous, is the one who freezes up. Mike comes and gives him a pep talk, and the two of them then do their little act. Just as a note of trivia, the two men who were the from the USO who were holding the audition were two of our regular stand-ins on the series, Lynn and Gordon. with the help of the Walton family, Mike decides he's going to take up JD's challenge. He has braces and crutches, and Mary Ellen kind of bullies and teases him to get going and practice on them and go upstairs, and she helps him with that. And then he's trying to figure out what he can do about the car, and Jim Bob has an idea. He has re-rigged his car to work with all hand controls, as did FDR with his vehicle. So now Mike has the car to drive up with, and he does, and he gets out, and he has his braces and his crutches, and he basically, confronts JD, and JD is still sputtering and carrying on that he didn't really think that, that Mike would do this, and Mike climbs those stairs. The family watches, cheering him on, and he makes it up there. And even JD, who does, he does know when to finally give in. He concedes the point and hires Mike to be his new supervisor. And of course, the family is there to celebrate with Mike. That's what I have for you for this 4th of July segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. So a very happy 4th to all of you, and I celebrate you, your families, and especially our soldiers, both active and veterans. We really appreciate everything you do, and thank you so much for your service. I'll be back with more Behind the Scenes of the Waltons and more Ask Judy. Thanks for watching.